have the pleasure of interviewing Brandon Tory. He's a rapper and a level 5 senior Apple engineer. Thank you so much for your time today, Brandon. Can you share your backstory with us?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction and also for the call. Since I was 14, since I was a kid, I've always been interested in coding. I really got into C++ at an early age. But I kind of had a dichotomy story because I was also really interested in music. And so through my journey, I actually became an artist in Los Angeles. And I was, pretty much making music full time. I actually was mentored by Timbaland, the legendary producer. Mm-hmm. And I had started this concept called multi-dream theory. And multi-dream is a play on the word multi-thread, which is how a computer context switch and is able to do more than one thing at once. And so I was thinking, well, I'm an engineer at heart, but I'm also an artist, and I can multi-thread my life. I can do both if I work hard enough. Mm-hmm. And so that was the concept. One of the issues, though, is the perception around both of those worlds. It's kind of a culture clash when you talk about, engineering versus rap music. So I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell any of my friends in Hollywood that I was actually an engineer. And I didn't tell any of my friends in the engineering world that I was a rapper. And so you can imagine how that kind of played out. And it was, it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of really amazing parties and all kind of cool stuff I was doing in LA. And then also in parallel, I've been an engineer at Apple and I've learned so much here. Mm-hmm. So for me, kind of the culmination of this into my backstory was a couple, maybe 2 weeks ago, I finally announced on my social media to all my fans and even my friends, because I didn't even tell them, that, hey, this whole time I've been putting out music videos and music and throwing these amazing parties in the hills in LA. I want to let you guys know I'm also an Apple engineer. And that's how I've been funding a lot of this stuff. And that was a huge thing for me. And for some people that might not be, an emotional thing, but for me it was an emotional thing because it was kind of stepping into, my full identity and telling people who I really am. People that I had been working with for years who only knew me as a rapper, didn't know I knew anything about tech. And then to find out I'm actually a level 5 engineer at Apple. It was kind of emotional and it was a fun thing to do. And the response was really cool.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I just wanted to touch a little bit more on that because, you decided not to tell anyone.
Yeah.
You were a level 5 engineer. What was your reasoning behind that and not telling anyone that you were, working for Apple, you're a guy that's in tech, but you're also a rapper. But what made you make that choice?
Yeah. On both sides, I wanted to be taken very seriously. And so you can imagine, I flew to Miami. I had the opportunity to meet with Timbaland directly in Hit Factory. I didn't walk in there and say, hey, Timbaland, I want you to know I'm actually an expert C++ developer and I know Java. I wanted him to respect my music. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't talk about that. And the same reason I didn't tell him was the same reason I didn't tell any of my fans or anyone else. It was, they were just two completely separate worlds to me. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not the guy that is going to make a rap song about engineering. That's not me. My rap music and my music is my music. My engineering is my engineering. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until recently that I found a way that I think is a cool way to artistically blend those two worlds. But it took me a long time. It was an emotional experience for me to figure that out because I just felt like I was two different people.
Yeah. So how did that make you feel, living in two worlds? You're a rapper, but you're, a great, engineer. How did you balance that?
It's like anything else. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes in order to keep up an image. And so for me, that may be doing a release party in LA that ends at 2 a.m. and then driving back to Silicon Valley to be at a meeting at 9. Wow. That kind of stuff. Staying up until 4 o'clock in the morning in downtown San Jose, finishing songs, then driving back to LA for the weekend, catching flights. I mean, it was a grind. And in the end, it allowed me to capture a lot of footage and a lot of music and a lot of content that really helped me to understand how to bring these two worlds together and how to tell my story. So I can't lie, behind the scenes, it was a grind. And it was a lot of, trying to keep up an image and keep up a perception. I threw a party in LA that cost, upwards of $20K. And 1,000 people RSVP'd and nobody knew I'm an engineer. They came out because they love my music. And for me, that just felt amazing to be able to do that. But I knew in the back of my mind, I need to find a way to really tell my truth. And that's what I'm trying to do now.
Gotcha. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Now, can you share the funniest or most interesting story that happened to you while working for Apple?
Yeah, so I got some great coworkers at Apple, some really funny guys, and I came into work one day, and I sat down. Nobody at Apple has any idea that I'm a rapper or a musician or anything like that. I'm very, I take my job pretty seriously, and I focus on coding and architecture and that kind of stuff. So last thing I expected was to come into work and hear my music playing on my phone. So I hear my music playing on my phone, and I'm freaking out. I'm looking for my phone so I can shut it off so nobody hears my song, right? So I'm looking around, I look at my jacket, I can't find it. I look down and I'm tapping, and finally I find it, and I pick it up, and I go to shut the music off, and it's not playing from my phone. So now it's getting louder, and I'm like, what is going on? It's not even on my phone. So I open my office, I go outside, and it keeps getting louder. I bend the corner, and a couple of my coworkers are playing it on the HomePod at maximum volume. And at that moment, I found that they had found my stuff on YouTube. And so we all had a laugh. I was like hyperventilating because I had never told anybody. But, that was one of those moments where you realize sometimes you put up these blockades in your own mind, but then, they actually, were really into it. So that was cool.
That's cool. So really, living your truth and knowing that you did not have to hide anymore, that was definitely a huge, lift off your shoulders.
Well, that was level one of that, because those are the guys that work right with me, right? But what really was the lift off my shoulder was when I showed some of my stuff to the management. And what I actually did was I used a lot of the footage from those parties and things that we talked about, and I put together a 1-minute clip that talked about this concept of multi-dream and how, Apple actually played a huge role in that, because I've used Apple technology the whole time. And I feel as though the evolution of technology is what's allowing people to start to do multiple things in one life. A lot of the boilerplate stuff is being offloaded into the tech anyway. So we as humans can focus on creativity. So I presented this 1-minute video to my boss. And in that moment, I really felt a huge relief, because he really loved it. And he said that I had his full support. And that really opened up my mind a lot.
Gotcha. Beyond the obvious, what makes Apple stand out over other companies?
So much, I really do love Apple. I think that the main thing that makes Apple stand out is the design, the design and the branding. And that goes beyond product design. It's almost the design of an experience. One example of that was when I first joined a couple of years ago. I moved into corporate housing. And from corporate housing, I actually was dropping music videos of a guy who was me, but didn't look anything like an Apple engineer, right? Like literally on the street, in my hometown with like 40 guys outside. And, but I'll always remember when I walked into corporate housing, there's an element in the engineering world of competitiveness when it comes to coding interviews and when it comes to ranking yourself among other engineers. And so I was in that mindset for a while, in preparation and interviewing, of being super competitive. It's something I want. And when I finally got it and I moved into corporate housing, it was almost like, well, I guess, maybe it wasn't that big a deal after all. I'm here now, and that was cool. Mm-hmm. But I'll never forget, I had looked on the counter, and they had a piece of folded stationery pre-prepared in this beautiful apartment they had furnished for us. And I opened it up, and all it said was, this is a big deal. Welcome to Apple. You've come to do the work of your life. And to me, that speaks to design, because they obviously do that for all the engineers who join, but the way that they pre-plan that so that we could sustain that feeling when we got here, I just thought that was really cool how they thought of that.
Cool. Well, thank you for that. Are you currently working on any new or exciting projects right now?
Yeah. So at Apple, we have a culture of kind of confidentiality. So I can't go into specifics, but I am working on some exciting stuff related to big data analytics, a lot of Swift coding, a lot of Python coding, some fun, cool stuff.
Cool. And Now, what advice would you give to CEOs or founders to help their employees to thrive?
So this is interesting because, in being in a position in tech where I've been asked to kind of lead, some of the other engineers, and also coming from the world of LA and Hollywood where I was, I'm an artist, but I also have a bunch of people who really believe in what I'm doing, and I'm, it's almost like a team that I'm trying to lead as well. What I've learned is that you have to trust people. You have to give people an opportunity to learn. Sometimes people may not have the skill set to achieve the goal yet, but give them the trust and the time to figure it out. And people are capable of amazing things. So I think that, just trusting people and having faith that people can step into roles and become really good, really great, is something that I've seen happen at Apple and that I've seen happen in LA. And it's super valuable.
Very cool. And now, is there a person that helped you to become successful, and how grateful are you to this person?
Yeah, definitely my grandfather. I could say my grandparents in general because my grandmother was awesome too. But my grandfather in particular, I can remember being maybe 5 years old and just being so interested in electronics. And he would bring me to Radio Shack and I would pick out different components and I would build little things. And I think that's really what started, my curiosity around engineering. And, he's also the same guy who supported me in music. He bought me a keyboard. He brought me to keyboard lessons and things like that. His father was a great trumpet player in the city of Boston. And so, everything I've learned about dependability, reliability, morals, comes from him. So definitely my grandfather would be number one in that category.
And definitely being, a Black man, you're in tech, you have grandparents, you have parents that are standing behind you. What suggestions or what advice would you give to other, young Black men and women who may not have the support of their family?
That's a great question.
Mhm.
For me, I've been meeting some guys who are really interested in tech, and so I've been faced with this kind of thing. Like, what do I want to tell them? For me, it wasn't something that anybody pushed me into, so it didn't feel like a burden to try to become good at it because I was really passionate about it. So I would encourage, other people who may be interested in tech to get really good at it, independent of your work. Find something you're passionate about, just build it. One of the things I love about software engineering in particular is you can kind of just create whatever you want. I mean, you don't have to buy a lot of parts to do it. You can just learn and code and continue to get better. So I would say, spend as much time as you can, even if it's not in school or in work, just getting really good. You want to get good at what you're trying to do.
Gotcha. And now, how have you used your success to bring goodness to the world?
Yeah, so I think that for a long time I was hiding who I was. So it was tough for me to use my story to really help anybody because I wasn't telling people. But just recently, I put out a music video called Seriously, and I'm coding in it. I put out an article called Multi-Dream where I really explain my mindset and why I hid some of these things, but also, what my conclusions were in my journey. And in doing that, literally my hand was trembling when I hit the upload button because I just had never been so open and so vulnerable before. Kind of where I'm from, it's not, weakness is frowned upon and vulnerability is not, a thing that you want to do. So for me to be open and really express my emotions was new. And the response that I was getting was just so much better than stuff I had done in the past. I put out songs and people have said, "Oh, this is great. I love this. I play this all the time." But this was different. This was, "Oh my God, I think I'm going to go back to school." Or, "You've just explained everything I've been feeling for the last, 5 years," or whatever. That's the kind of responses I've been getting. And so I really am happy about that.
And now, can you share the top 5 lessons that you have learned from your experience as being a Black man in tech?
Yeah, top five is tough. I definitely know the number one lesson that I learned. In So before I had left my job in tech to pursue music full time, I was at a different company in Boston, which is my hometown, and I was in a meeting with a gentleman who was white and with a gentleman who was Black, and they were both older, much older than me. They were senior position guys, and I had on a full suit, like the tie and and everything, and nobody in the building was dressed that way. Everybody had on jeans and whatever, and so the older white guy, who was a super nice guy, I really loved him. But he looked at me and said, "Brandon, you know, it was nice when you first started, but you don't need to wear a shirt and slacks and a tie every day. You don't have to do that." And so we all laughed. And then he ended up leaving to go to another meeting. And the older Black gentleman looked at me with a dead serious face, pointed at my arm, indicating my complexion, and said, "Yes, you do." And, I think people might take that different ways, but the way that I took it was, not in a literal sense, but you do have to stay sharp. You do have to stay one step ahead. And, we have to fight to get what we deserve. And I think that that's a lesson that's the lesson that I took from that conversation that I had with him. And he was super supportive of me ever since.
Yeah. And just talking about that, being a Black man in tech, the barriers that Black people have to go through as far as getting into the tech industry, how do you feel about that? Or do you have like any experiences that you would like to share?
Yeah, I think that it's a complex topic. I think that it's very deep and systematic. I think it all starts with education and opportunities and also exposure to things like what you're doing now, seeing people who are in the field who look like us, is something that really helps us, because then it's like, oh, okay, this is something that I might be able to pattern my trajectory off of. So, I think that I've got friends who are in education and they could talk for hours about this stuff. But for me, I know that it's definitely a product of being able to see some role models and some different key figures and say, that guy, I can kind of pattern some of the stuff I want to do after that.
Yeah, definitely. And lastly, who would you love to have a private breakfast or lunch with, and why?
So this is interesting. I actually had the opportunity to meet one-on-one with Jimmy Iovine about a month ago, which was life-changing. I've met Timbaland, which was awesome, and him and I, have talked several times. At this point in my life, unequivocally, it will be Kanye West. And the reason for that is, and I know he's a controversial guy, but when it comes to my mindset and the multi-dream theory that I kind of have coined, I feel like he's a pioneer of that, because he got his foundation in music, and he's one of the greatest musicians ever, in my opinion. But he's been able to leverage that and go into other things. He's been able to take that and break into the fashion world. He's been able to do multiple things, and he talks about it a lot. And so I would be lying if I were to say that he wasn't someone that I've looked up to on my journey. So definitely Kanye.
Cool. No, I agree with you. I would love to have a private breakfast with Kanye. I
Yeah,
just want to pick his brain. I just want to know what's going on. So that would,
exactly.
yeah, because he's a very controversial person, but he's deep. I mean, he really is a deep guy. So yeah, I agree with you. I would love to, sit down with him and kind of like pick his brain and see what's going on in there. So
Yeah, for sure.
And now, any last words that you have, for anyone that is a, Black person in tech, they want to get into the space, what would you tell them?
I think the future is exciting. I think that we're at a time when content and tech are starting to blend. And, a lot of our stories from our cultural side are what's in demand. And tech is a great place to kind of build a foundation, because there are some great opportunities in the workforce. So I think the future is bright. I think if you're interested in tech, dive into it. Find the sector of tech that you're passionate about, and become really good at it. And you don't actually have to sacrifice everything else you might care about. Someone like me who really loves to rap, and I never thought I'd be able to, meet with Timbaland and also, be an engineer at Apple at the same time. So I think that the future will be even brighter as we go forward.
No, I definitely agree. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. But where can people find your music?
Yeah, so you can find all my stuff, Brandon Tory, BrandonTory. I'm an engineer, so my search engine optimization should be on point. You can find me on Google, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the platforms. And I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
Yes, thank you so much, Brandon, once again. Thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll be able to see you again. And like I told everyone out there, go to Brandon's site, listen to his music, see what's going on. Definitely support this brother. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.